Before he became the ghost of Sparta, before the blades, the rage, the gods he swore to kill, there was a man who tried to outrun himself. A man who asked for power to survive and didn't understand the price. This is the story of God of War. The early 2000s were a time of identity crisis for the industry. The colorful, all-ages era of the mascot platformer was fading, and a hunger for something visceral was taking its place. And into this void stepped David Jaffe and a fledgling team at Sony Santa Monica. Jaffe didn't want to make another game about saving the world, he wanted to capture the cinematic brutality of a Greek tragedy. At the time, the PlayStation 2 was nearing its sunset, yet Jaffe and lead designer Cory Barlog were determined to squeeze one last roar of defiance out of the hardware. They weren't just building a game, they were building a monument to a new kind of mature storytelling. One that was less about heroism and more about jagged edges of human psyche. The development of God of War was fueled by friction that was both creative and technical. Jaffe's vision was uncompromising. He wanted a game that felt like a continuous, unblinking eye, utilizing a fixed camera system to dictate exactly what the player felt. This wasn't just a technical shortcut for the PS2, it was a directorial choice to emphasize scale. When Kratos stands before the Hydra, the camera forces you to feel his insignificance. And in the combat, the Blades of Chaos weren't just designed to be fun, they were designed to feel heavy, tethered, and permanent. They were a mechanical representation of Kratos' servitude to Ares, the God of War. In the game, you can see the blades act as a leash. Every time you swing them, you're reminded that Kratos sold his autonomy for a victory he did not deserve. Jaffe and Barlog were interested in the weight of violence. They wanted the player to feel the cost of every strike. More than just finishing the game, it was about participating in a contract that Kratos had signed with his family's blood. It was a study in the desperation of a man who realized too late that power is never free. The collapse of Kratos' humanity is the emotional core of the game. Under Ares' influence, Kratos slaughtered his own wife and child in a blind, magically induced bloodlust. The tragedy wasn't just the act, but the mark it left. An oracle cursed Kratos, fusing the ashes of his family to his skin. He became the ghost of Sparta. Not because of a title, but because he was literally draped in the evidence of his own failure.
Ares, you will die for what you did that night.
He became a walking tomb, a visual reminder that even in a world of gods and magic, ignorance does not absolve you of your guilt. This is the moment the game stops being a power fantasy and starts being a noir. Kratos doesn't wear a mask, he wears his sin. The pale, ash-white skin is a brand that he is forever tied to. Back when the game came out, we were used to protagonists having tragic backstories, but we weren't used to playing as the person who committed the atrocity. By forcing us to step into the shoes of a man who had already failed his most basic human duty, Santa Monica Studio turned the audience into accomplices. We weren't just watching a tragedy, we were carrying the ashes.
Kratos, your quest is at an end. You are the first mortal to ever reach Pandora's box. There is still time to save Athens. You must bring the box back to my city and use it to kill Ares. Return to Athens, Kratos. Return and save my city.
For 10 years, Kratos serves Olympus, hoping for a release that the gods have no intention of giving. Athena acts as a handler, offering guidance that sounds like mercy but feels like manipulation. The gods promise Kratos that if he kills Ares, his past will be forgiven, but as the audience and the player we knew that forgiveness is not the same as peace. And that's why Kratos' journey through the Temple of Pandora, chained to the back of the Titan Kronos, is a masterpiece of punitive design. The traps aren't just obstacles, they're a reflection of a world that views Kratos as a tool to be used and eventually discarded. In the game, the gods were the ultimate antagonists because they offered a lie. They promised him redemption, but redemption is something you find within yourself, not something granted by a committee of deities. Kratos was being redirected, not saved. The tragedy of the first God of War is that Kratos actually believed them. He believed that if he killed enough, bled enough, and served enough, the nightmares would stop. But guilt isn't a debt you can pay off with more violence. When God of War launched, it didn't just move units, it shifted the gravity of the entire industry. It popularized the quick time event, not as a gimmick, but as a way to blend the agency of the player with the cinematic vision of the director. It proved that prestige games didn't have to be slow or experimental. They could be loud, violent, and deeply psychological. The original God of War and its legacy had a significant role in changing Sony's trajectory. It turned the PlayStation into the home for cinematic epics, paving the way for all the coming major titles to the 2018 reinvention of Kratos himself. The reason to why we played God of War over and over and why it had an invisible pull to bring us back to it was that to some extent we resonated with the character. We played it because we knew in some dark corner of our psyche what it felt like to be Kratos. We knew what it was like to be driven by a mistake we could not take back, to feel the weight of a past that refused to stay buried. Kratos wins every battle in the game. He tears Ares apart, he climbs out of Hades, he claims the throne of war, but he loses the only battle that matters, the one inside his own mind. At the edge of the cliff where the game began, Kratos finally attempts to end his life, realizing that the gods had kept their promise of forgiveness but denied him the gift of forgetting. They made him a god, but they left him with the memories of a monster. That is the philosophical core of God of War. It's a story about the lie of redemption, the idea that power can somehow heal trauma. Kratos sits on his throne as the new God of War, immortal and invincible, yet still draped in the ashes of the family he can never see again. In the end, he didn't escape his past, he just became a monument to it.